you. Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry for the delay. We'll get up to 3 in a moment. This section is about a beginning of solutions towards how we can demonstrate to the world just how good Dubai education is. The last time Tim's and Pearls was looked at, I got the tests and a list of kids, I put them in the room together, I picked the tests up and I threw them back into the device about it. And I suspect the majority of us did exactly the same thing. We might have looked at the list and thought, oh, we picked some kids here who maybe don't get involved in the schools, but anyway, we just get on. We weren't particularly bothered about it. The results came out last year. I've still to work out in my head why it takes nearly 2 years to get these results to us. But it's been followed by Sheikh Mohammed coming along and saying he wants to buy in the top 17, the top 50, which is fine. I think within this community there's a spirit towards positivity and education which can take us forward, and a willingness to prove to the world that we're as good as anyone. I think if we are prepared, we are thoughtful, we are purposeful, we are meaningful about what we do, 17th is not the target. We should be trying to get into the top 10. Because that's where I see Dubai education. The quality of education provided across this city is exceptional in so many ways. So how do we go about this? One is we come together, we start to think, we start to be proactive about this. And there's enough talent in this room alone to take that agenda on board. So this is the start of the journey. So we intend to share some insight today, to get the ball rolling, to open up avenues where your ideas become valuable to everybody else in the room. If they're valuable to everybody else in the room, they become valuable to everybody else in the city. So the next stage beyond this might be to bring the leadership together, probably in November we're talking about. Well, we've got 300 or 400 of the leaders of the schools in, and we really hammer this down. Now, finishing on a term like hammer this down, one of the questions could be, when are the tests going to happen? What's the date? And it's somewhere between February
to May.
Simply when we divide the best of things. So we're trying to pin the dates down at the moment. We're not able to do that for a whole host of reasons. So, open minds, open channels of communications, collaborative success. That's what we're driving towards. Now in the short term, there are some quick fixes. We're aware of it now, we know it's coming, we can get ready. We can look at the types of things we're doing, we can look at our curricula, and we can make adjustments to delivery to make sure the right material is presented to students before the test rather than just afterwards, which I know happens in some cases last time. We can look at the nature of the tests and do some pre-test prep. Simple basic steps which will make a difference. The longer term view is up to 2018, we can make structural changes which do make a difference to the quality of education, the type of education, and the type of learning the students experience, which is really important if we're really going to strive to get into this top 10. So I've talked enough. The really good stuff's going to come from David. And then at the end, we'll probably break into groups. There's not a lot of us, but we'll try and have an open forum, get some questions together, share our concerns, share a way forward, and look forward to the next step. So think of this as stage 1. Stage 2 will be in November, and there probably will be an opportunity for us to meet beyond that as well. And it's about empowering you to empower students to be successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob, for the introduction. Can I also introduce Ashok Kumar, who's been working on this with us, and Daryl Bloud, who will be joining us later on. And I think the spirit that we want to take is that of collaboration. It's a national agenda. It's particularly Dubai-wide, but I think it'll be wider than that, and we need to be partnering up together. And part of today is really establishing where we are. Rob said it's the first step. We actually had a prelude to this back in June where we started to discuss in workshops, and I see Andy was here as well, one of the workshop leaders, where we got groups of people to discussing just what they understood about PISA and TIMSS, where they were at, and knowledge of the national agenda per se, because it's beyond PISA and TIMSS, but they're really at the forefront of what we're targeting. I'll take you through, I suppose, a series of slides which will place that agenda, and I do apologise if some of you are very much aware of this already. I'll also give you a little bit of info about how it could impact inspection judgments in case you're unaware, and then we do move on to say what the targets are on a school level, what they might be on a national level, and how we can set about addressing those together. We don't yet have the solutions. We've got ideas that we've worked on in our own schools, ideas that we've been discussing with one another and with other colleagues. What we want is a real think tank across Dubai where we actually collaborate on this to a common goal, realising that 2015 is not far away, as Rob said. The window for these assessments is most likely to be March, April, but between February and May is the window we have, and then the longer term is 2018. But I'll talk you through that as we go through. Can I just check everybody can hear me? Can you hear me clear enough? Yeah.
In the end, we would be looking from each table 5 solutions or 5 questions, which I'll collect from you. We'll collate it and we'll share it with everyone. Once it's over, just brainstorm from each table 5 questions or 5 solutions, whatever you can do. Thank you.
Okay, it's very brief background. I won't patronise you by reading each slide in turn, but the goal, the target is 2021. Just to save you time as well, these will all be available on the What Works website, as will the links to the resources I've put at the end, because one of the things that came out from the June sessions was a lack of resource being available to us, as Rob says, to be able to practice and to familiarise ourselves with the demand. So 2021, it's the 50th anniversary of the UAE as a nation, very timely therefore, in terms of the target setting. Also, it's the year that follows on from Expo 2020, so there will be a lot of focus on the region and on Dubai in particular. If you haven't seen this page, I'm hoping everybody has, but inside the current inspection handbook, it opens up. So you can't get any closer to the front, a guide to what is required according to the national agenda. And there are 8 key points, ranging from reduction to 0 is a target, for example, for foundation place entry to university. But the ones we're focusing on in our schools in particular are the ambitious targets for PISA and TIMSS. They are ambitious because where we're starting from. But again, to echo what was said earlier, we should be setting our targets higher than that, and we'll move on to the targets very shortly. But in case you're not aware, do have a look through this, because it's going to be big impact, and it lays it out very clearly for you. So we met in June, and some key themes that were coming through are what we want to develop. It's the aspects of, firstly, collaboration. We're not going to succeed if we don't start working together in partnership in our own schools and reaching out to other schools. When we had these first sessions in June, 101 schools attended, 101 school leaders. It was the biggest gathering of heads of school with a common goal. But not everybody attended. And the same today, not everybody will be attending. So we'll be looking to create networks where we can reach out and collaborate with others. Key aspects that came through from research as well, and were discussed there, about reading and the importance of reading. In the forthcoming PISA assessments in particular, the priority, the focus will be on science. But in 2018, the focus will return to reading. It goes in a 3-year cycle. So in 2015, the focus will be on science. But there's research that shows that just by improving reading scores, it has for every 1 point you gain in terms of reading, you gain by default a 0.6 increase in math scores and a 0.8 increase in science scores. So the reading skills and the fact that students can extract data meaningfully into purpose will help in all 3 domains. But in particular for 2018, that will be the key focus. In TIMSS, in case people don't know, the focus is always science and mathematics. In PISA, it rotates. So reading for fun as well as reading for purpose. As we heard earlier, preparation. 2015 isn't far away. So to start to reach our first targets, our initial targets, we need to take these seriously. And as Rob said, perhaps we weren't preparing ourselves and our students for these assessments last time around. Perhaps they arrived, we had a sample which possibly didn't represent our school. Possibly over Dubai, it was better in representing the population. But were we taking these seriously enough? I know, again, from my experience, 2009 and 2012, they arrived, we did them, we got the results. And until we were really sort of asked to focus on them, we scanned through them, and that was it. We didn't really pay that much heed to them. I'm talking about personal reflection, because they weren't representing our entire population. It was a snapshot. But that snapshot is becoming increasingly more important. Our role as leaders, we need to make this a high priority in our schools and across the city. And what we have here is the start of this community. Sorry, are there chairs around for those who are joining? I'll just pause for a moment. So, 2015 and then 2018 and beyond. What can we do immediately, or what can we do in the long term? I'll just let you read those for a moment, because this will probably guide some of our discussion towards the end, where you sit around your groups and establish where you are at as a school, or as an individual in your understanding, where you need to get to, and how we set about going there. So there are some ideas. These aren't the solutions, but there are some ideas about what we need to do, both in the immediate and long term, to make this a success. Let's just take a moment to scan through those. And what I'll do, if I may, is just focus on the long-term solutions. Because I think key to making this a success is that we don't see it as teaching to the test. We might have the need to do that, or to at least familiarise ourselves with the type of questioning that will be apparent in 2015. But beyond that, many of us who've looked through the type of material that is used have seen it as a means to proper, good quality, high value contextualised learning. So we're not emphasising here the need to teach the test. We're actually looking at building solid contextualised learning. And in fact, all of the questions we will see later on the assumption that the internet is working fully, you will see that they're all placed in context, and they're very often placed in a context which is relevant, whether it be environmental, whether it be an activity based, something that the children can relate to in real life. So the learning should be driving this, good quality learning which is relevant to the students. And if we get that right, the assessment piece will follow. And again, I don't mean to patronise, it's just what we've seen, and we're trying to guide people on that. So don't make the test the focus, let it guide your learning. So focus on TIMSS and PISA, which are the assessment aspects of this. TIMSS, as it says, is based on mathematics and science. And you can see that our current rank is 23 of the 42 participating nations. So we're just in the bottom half. And the aspiration of Sheikh Mohammed is by 2021, and I'll come back to that date in a moment, 2021, that we're in the top 15 countries. But Rob suggested that we don't get the results immediately. So to be in the top 15 or higher by 2021, we will have need to have reached there by 2018. Or in Tim's case, 2019, I apologise. So TIMSS, you will see as well, has a particular focus. If you're in a K-12 system, it will be focused on your grade 4 and grade 8 students. So know your populations. In a UK or a typical 13-year system, years 5 and 9. Okay? Is everybody familiar with this already? Shall I go through it a bit quicker so we can get to the discussion? Yeah. For PISA, this is the one that rotates 15-year-olds, a sample of 15-year-olds in your schools. Our current ranking, 46 out of 65 participating countries. You know, we're close to the bottom third. In fact, we're in the bottom third. And the target there is to be top 20 or better. There's a challenge. And again, because of the timeless, we need to be getting there by 2018. The results will come out in late 2019 or 2020. So the 2021 cycle will be too late for this target. So really it's quite urgent. We've got the 2015 targets and 2018 targets, and I'll come on to those shortly. Reiterating the cycle and the timing of the results. and here are the targets. So national Dubai-wide targets, where we're at the moment. So across Dubai as a whole, in each of the disciplines, maths, reading and science, we're at level 2. 464 in maths, 468 in reading, 474 in science. We'll know that many of our schools, above that, but many will be below that. The target is for the average across Dubai to be 520 in each discipline. So again, some schools will be performing above that level already. And if you look at the percentage change, sorry, I'm a mathematician by trade. If you look at some of those percentages, we're talking about maths there increasing by 12% or so. Now, not every school is going to be able to increase by 12%. If we could, it would be wonderful. We'll have hit the target. But some schools will only make 2 or 3% increases. Some schools, we had some schools who between the last cycles made exponential improvements. It depends on where you're coming from, how seriously these have been taken, what the ability of our students are. But if each of us set our own targets, and we'll see in a moment what has been set, that's the national level. So here's an example from a school. 2012, this school is hitting 501 mathematics, has its target here. Again, these targets are above the national level, but these will be averaged out by other schools which have their targets beneath or below those. But as Rob said, I would be pitching to aim above these. I'd be pitching to hit in excess of these. If we fall short, we fall short. But let's set our own targets, let's know our own populations, let's look at who the students are, and know our people from now.
Sorry, I have a question. Are you taking questions now?
I can take a question now, by all means.
No, I'm just wondering if you can explain what these numbers actually mean.
Okay.
We all see the numbers there, but what does it mean? And if you bump it up by 20, or what sort of, are you going to touch on this?
I'm going to show that just towards the end, because in each of the guides you will have a range. So for example, 475 to 550 is a certain range and so forth. So your school will fall somewhere between there. But I'll give you examples of where you can find that before we close, okay? And then we can develop that further. So this particular school, as I say, will have targets where it's currently working at about high level 2, low level 3, and is looking to push those up. Schools will have different targets. These should be known to you already. If they're not, they are in your PISA guide. Okay, so in your school feedback from 2012, make sure you look those up, and I'll show you again a little bit more about that shortly. So, while I get those documents to show you, there's some ideas about what we can do for 2015. And I think the final statement there is an important one. Whether we like it or not, they will be a factor when we're visited by the DSIB inspectors this year. What they'll be looking for is, have you reviewed your school's performance previously? And are you aware of what either TIMSS or PISA will be assessing? If so, have you modified your curriculum in any way to adapt for that? I can give you an example that we're doing in our school. We realised that our curriculum, in terms of biology, wasn't looking deeply enough at classification systems. But it's a focus, particularly with science being a focus, it'll be a focus in PISA. So we've adapted our curriculum to make sure that we have sufficient coverage. We got the feedback from both PISA and TIMSS showing that school was underperforming mathematics domain in terms of geometry, shape and measure. So we've made sure that those aspects are sufficiently well covered prior to the assessments. Otherwise we're just letting ourselves down. So we're reviewing the curriculum to make sure that the material matches the needs of the assessment. Adapted teaching methods. I'm in an IB school. I'm very fortunate in that sense that much of our curriculum is inquiry-based, is contextualised, is real-life example. I'm sure the same is for many of us. But look at the type of assessments that are being asked and make sure that the students encounter this within the curriculum.
David, a question.
Sorry, Darryl.
Asked here from some schools or by some schools as to how do you go about modifying the curriculum?
As I said, it could be simply that you take your curriculum, and if there are aspects which feature later on. We're not rewriting a curriculum, but if there are aspects which feature later on, because PISA and TIMS are designed to be curriculum independent, that you make sure that without devising a whole new curriculum, that areas which you might not have touched on or touched on sufficiently, you move around. There isn't a simple answer. It's up to each school to see whether their curriculum.
It's important to keep sharing best practices.
Absolutely, and that's what these are about. I think what we'll be doing in about 15 minutes, for the last 15 minutes, is seeing where we find that we've got any shortfalls, what we can do about them, and see what other colleagues are doing. My job isn't to tell people what to do. I think I'm trying to just start this discussion so that we can actually share what we're doing. But we'll come back to that. So there's some ideas about what we can do, and I'll before I close, I will come on to the where we talked about where the levels are. I've got some examples with me, and I'll open these shortly. We've got some questions which came about last time, and I've taken a shortcut at the end. There is so much resource available online. If you simply Google TIMS released materials, PISA released materials, you'll get a wealth of available resource. But for example, we're relying on technology. Well, while we're waiting, so we were asked about the levels and the descriptors. So in the appendix of each of your guides, you will have a breakdown of, for example, level 6 is described as 669 points, level 5, 607, and there are descriptors in there. Oh dear. It worked at home and it worked in school. So, I'll try again in a moment. So you have these guides as to what is typical attainment. Now obviously, if you're midway, you'd be looking at students achieving most but not all of these, but there are simple rubrics in the back of each of the documents. Something else I wanted to speak about before we open the floor. In each of your TIMS documents, while there aren't targets in the same way as the PISA targets are set, there aren't individualized targets per school. There is a very valuable breakdown of, firstly, the focus areas. So if you're not aware of them, on page 6 in each of your documents will be the weighting. So for example, in mathematics for the grade 8, what proportion is based on number, algebra, geometry, data and chance, and also the areas of strength and weakness in your school. Okay, so again, if you do need to review your curriculum, we did find that we weren't covering enough geometry, shape, space and measure. So we've reviewed that based on this, and a similar finding came through the PISA document, that geometry was the worst performing area for our students. So that has impacted on our curriculum review over the last 12 months. So things that we do annually anyway, and I'm sure we all do, is now influenced by PISA and TIMS as well as our other sources. So we're not saying be slaves to these, but use them as another piece of information in terms of your planning. I'll just try this once more. I don't know if... Can
I just explain? You might find it unusual that a Welshman talking here, and that the top country mentioned there is Wales. It's nothing to do with the fact that David's Welsh, actually. And I'm going to talk on pain of getting a good thump from him here. What happened was in Wales is very similar to us. They separated from the UK government education system, and their approach towards PISA and TIMS and external validation was very laissez-faire. They sat back and they weren't bothered. So they went through a cycle of PISA and TIMS, and their results absolutely flawed. And it shocked them. And what they've done since is they've built up a whole layer of resources, and it's all available on the Welsh National Education website. And in the best of educational practice, it's differentiated. So they're saying, this is your starting point, these are the next steps, this is your problem, this is step 1, this is step 2, this is step 3. So it's quite complex to navigate because there's so much information there. But once you understand the structure of it, it's really, really supportive, because the journey we may be stepping into here is the one they've already been on. And they've put the resources out for the world to get the hands on as well. So ignore the fact David's Welsh, and ignore the fact I'm being hit for saying the Welsh education system wasn't great for a while, but they came through it and they succeeded in meeting their targets. But they worked as a nation to do it. So I think we should steal this, I think we should go to work on it and find out what suits our own schools. And if it works for us, or we think it's worth, come back and share it with other schools at future meetings. It's okay, I've found a good resource, this is what's working, or we've taken an element of this and used it to restructure part of our curriculum, and we look as though we're going to get some good results or good outcomes from it. So, you know, we're beyond the age of not stealing. We're teachers, for goodness sake, we've stolen all of our lives. That's what makes a good classroom. But there's great resources out there, and there are people and there are nations who've been this before, so don't reinvent the wheel. Sorry for hammering the Welsh there, David.
No, I will check the links. The science ones are opening. These will be placed on the released material, just as guides, but I don't know if you saw as we opened up the presentation, there are hundreds of other items. I've got many of them here that we can make available for everybody's disposal. The idea is that we start the process of sharing. What I didn't want to do was to overload people by saying, you know, there's 10 examples of science questions and 10 examples of maths. But you might have seen then just some of the practical examples. What I'll do, I'll leave these sort of running in the background if people want to refer to them. But I think the idea now is for people to just have a chat in your groups. And as Ashok said, if you can come up with sort of a few statements of where you feel you're at, and what you would like to know more about, or any way that we can, if we can't answer them now, because the likelihood is we can't, or we don't yet know what the solutions are, even to the discussion about when will the assessments happen. We know roughly, but we will take these away and we'll try and get solutions sent around to everybody who's attended today. All the schools will be sent the responses, as well as setting up for the next sessions, which we hope to have in November. So if we had about maybe 5 or 10 minutes just of brainstorming around the table, and then if people come up with their key questions that we can take away or answer immediately.
One sheet from each table.
I think that should be good.
Because I couldn't see on the slide.
On the more detailed one, it's actually.
You could conclude your session.
So you can now give them pointers on a way forward.
Yeah. Can I close just by thanking you all? If there are any burning questions, I've had one or two that we've tried to address. We will take them in the few minutes we have, but I think more likely is we'll synthesise all the queries and questions and suggestions, some very valid suggestions there, and come back with a strategy that we can all adopt and work together on. But are there any burning issues that we want to bring up quickly?
It's a good question I've been asked by someone in the room. If there's such a big focus for Dubai to get into the top 15, what about the schools, the countries, sorry, that are currently ahead of us? How many of them are just as myopic about these numbers?
I can't answer just as about being myopic, but I certainly imagine many of them are focusing on it and will be raising their bar as well. So the challenge is possibly not the 520, but it's actually looking at just being the best we can, and setting our bar higher as well, because schools and jurisdictions and countries will also be moving forward, and some will fall back, you know. But I think, yeah, it's a valid question that we can't be static or assume that other countries will remain static, but by being the best we can, we give it a best shot. We can't predict that.
I just wondered if there was a common knowledge about the intensity with which people are focusing on these numbers.
Yeah, there are other countries who had shocks and surprises and have been challenged. I think Finland have been used to being top forever, haven't they? And they got knocked off their perch, so they'll have a look at
science,
I think the things in our favour are great kids. There's a great want to learn in our students, great families. We bring great educators into Dubai, so that's a distinct advantage. One of the things we briefly talked about there was the increasing levels of stability in our school populations. When I first arrived here, the 2-3 year contracts were very much split. People in and out of Dubai would get the kids for 2 or 3 years and go. But if I can give you an example, in one of my schools, there's a parent been bugging me for a school place in year 6, and I've had no change in 6 months. Not one place has become available in 6 months. Now that's just not the Dubai I walked into 10 years ago. So the fact we've got our children for longer is we do better things for longer with them. So we should see that positive outcome as a result of what we do. Then there's our awareness, that focus upon being successful, and we're going to do well. We're going to prove we can do this, and that's going to get us there. We look into the longer term things about curriculum change, focus on deeper learning, and that's going to take much more time, but we've got more time. We've got 3 years to really come together and collaborate on that. And one of the things I think we've got to push with KHDA is we've got what works, which works at a whole school level, is maybe push harder and harder for what works at a leadership level. So we're coming together as school leaders more often to talk about more and more diverse things. Not just about national agenda, but about leadership itself, about leadership models, good practice, different types of curriculum. Even just, if you think we can get together and share the experience of the planet, which is sitting in this city, and get that together on twice a year through conferences, really good, because what will happen beyond that is our ability to walk into other schools and ask questions is enhanced, because we'll know the people in the other schools. I've just been asked, one school hasn't done PISA before, what's the baseline, what's it about? And the main thing for me is come and see us, we'll sit down with you, we'll go through our data for the last 2, and we'll work with you to help you get there. Now that sort of collegiate approach is really going to pay dividends over the next couple of years. And will it help us all? Of course it will. The worst thing about headship and the worst thing about 100 private schools operating and reinventing the wheel 100 times, there's a lot of wasted energy there. If we can use our energy and our expertise and share it to get to the place we want to be, then great. I'm sorry, Johnny, I have to mention you. And another question I got mentioned was that there are people in this room who are fantastic at data analysis and using that data analysis to make an impact in the classroom. Now, let's identify those people, and the next time we meet, put sessions on in groups of 15 or 20, where people who are acknowledged experts in data analysis and making an impact in the classroom share their knowledge, their expertise, and help us all get there. If that's step one, that's great. Okay, so thanks very much for your patience, your time, for coming, and good luck. Thank you.
We had a question that, we had a lovely discussion here that schools are following skills-based curriculum. How do they cater for a test which is content-based?
I think if you look at the material that was on there, and I'll make it all public. It's skills driven. It's not content based. It's actually curriculum independent. So if you look at much of it is infer the way you can infer data, the way you can then apply information that is provided. So it definitely isn't content driven.
Yeah, but there's a lot of knowledge-based questions in these.
There are knowledge-based questions in science, for example, in mathematics. The argument might be that they're valid knowledge-based because you need the knowledge to be able to apply. I don't think I can answer that. I think it's it's well researched. It's meant to be curriculum independent and not solely driven by knowledge. But the argument might be that you need a basis of knowledge in participants to be able to apply it in any case. So, but that'd be worth you looking at the materials and seeing how comparable it is with your curriculum and your current assessments. And if there is a real conflict, bring that to the next session and we can see what we do about that. I don't have an answer, sorry.
David, just a very quick one. This is a national agenda and all of us have to contribute to make it happen. Could there be a structural approach centrally, because all of us at the moment look not very clear about what we expect to do, how we want to bring those curriculum modifications. Some past papers, I remember last year we had a meeting where you had some past papers that could be shared. So could there be a structural approach, a common structural approach for all schools that's minimal expectation? I think that would be a good guideline for all of us.
I think I absolutely agree. I think what we need to do though is to build a base, because 3 of us can't be responsible for sourcing all of this literature. So we need networks of our own. So what the three of us and others will be looking at is seeing how do we reach out into the communities and get working groups to address these needs. I'll more than happy share anything that I have here and more, but I think what we do need is, as you say, is a centralised and a common approach instead of it being ad hoc where somebody gets something and somebody else doesn't. I absolutely agree. I think that would probably inform our next session, which we're hoping to hold in November. So these are the questions we want from you to be able to address, but support as well, because we need more than just three of us. It's such a big project, such a huge agenda, that anybody who's willing to pitch in, and particularly representatives from the different curricula, because then they could be the voice about the type of question we've just heard that actually it doesn't tie in with our curriculum at the moment. So the more volunteers, the better, if you like. If anybody wants to contact me directly, please do, and I'll put those networks together. Thank you. Good point.